Not escape the ordinary and embark on a journey of self-discovery at our transformational Revive and Thrive retreat. Experience moments of clarity, find inner peace and unlock your true potential, surrounded by breathtaking natural beauty. There is only one spot left for our Revive and Thrive retreat this May. Don't miss your chance to join this life-changing experience with the most incredible group of women who are all cheering each other on. There is one more place available. Transform your life and reserve your place today.
Hello and welcome to the More to Life podcast. I am your host, Elle Mace, and today we are joined by the fabulous Sophia Ellis. Hi, Sophie.
Hello, you're right.
Yeah, so I am joined by a GB heavyweight athlete and coach. So good to have you here. We are here in person in London today. So Sophia, just tell us a little bit about that. Who are you? What do you do? I want to know. I've seen on your socials you're like 4 times this, 2 times this. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a 2-time European powerlifting champion, 4-time British powerlifting champion. I hold the European and British deadlift record, the British total record, British bench record, quite a lot of records. Yeah, so I compete for Great Britain and also coach as well. So
amazing. And as of today, you're a movie star.
It's crazy. Yeah, so as of yesterday was the world premiere for a film that I'm in. It's called I Could Never Go Vegan, because I'm also vegan. I've been vegan for over 10 years now. And yeah, so they featured me in the film, just me like powerlifting and just showing that you can be on a plant-based diet and be strong, basically.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see it. When's it go out live?
I think it's pretty soon because the premiere was yesterday. So and there's like posters out about it already. So yeah it should be out pretty soon.
So I know a little bit about you and your background, and what I know is that you've had an eating disorder previously, and obviously now you're this like incredible Great Britain times 2500 like medalist. So let's just find out a bit about you. You've had a bit of a roller coaster ride up into this moment, or up into a few years ago, and I feel like things kind of like got a little bit steadier for you.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning.
All right.
Oh, yeah. So Sophia, what was little Sophia like? What was life like for Sophie as a child?
It was very I think different to what like most children were. Grew up with mum, dad and brothers and sisters, but I think from quite a young age, when I was we throw it right back and going into like how the eating disorders kind of came about. When I was 8 years old, I was sexually molested by my next door neighbor, which obviously a child at 8 years old, like you don't know what's going on, like it's very hard to process stuff like that. So it all went to like court and everything, and it was a bit of a shit show. And I think as a family, like something like that is so traumatic that we just kind of like all erased it from our memory and like didn't actually, I think nothing happened of it. Like we all just kind of like moved on from it. And I think even just growing up, like it was very much our family just kind of like just get on with things. Like we just move on, and like my dad was in the military, and it was always just like, you just kind of get on with things, you just get on with life, and you can't let things just like drag you down. So that was kind of my mentality growing up. And same with my brothers, like we were very like strong-willed, just got on with stuff, and even though whatever kind of obstacles we had, we just kind of just keep going. And I think although that's a very good mentality to have, it's also not in the sense of you don't end up actually like dealing with things properly, or like, and then this ends up you use unhealthy coping mechanisms later down in life. So I had a bit of a rocky childhood, mainly because it was a great childhood, but also like there's parts of it that were also a bit messed up. So when I was 13, so my mum and dad had just split up. It was like quite an abusive relationship.
Okay.
So obviously then also growing up within like a household like that it has an effect on you. You don't realize at the time, but it does. And then my dad went to stay with his mum for a bit, and one night we got a call that my dad was fighting for his life in hospital, and it was just like, what's gone on? Essentially, my dad got stabbed by a burglar 8 times with a carving knife. He got kicked downstairs and stabbed. The burglar killed our cat, slashed the TV. Luckily, my nan wasn't harmed at all. She was like bedridden at the time. It was just crazy. Like everything just happened so quickly. Like the breakup, and now my dad's like fighting for his life in hospital. So my dad essentially died. And then got resuscitated, and they caught the guy just standing outside the house with the knife, and he was claiming that the devil told him to do it, so it's obviously like a bit crazy. Or like obviously had like mental health issues.
Did you know your dad?
No,
so he completely random.
So basically like turned up to my dad's house and was like, oh, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, and my dad was like, sorry, like I don't believe in that. Like my dad was an atheist. He was just like very nice about it. He was like, oh, sorry, like I'm not kind of interested. And then the guy basically put his foot in the door, and then just essentially then ran upstairs, like grabbed a knife, kicked my dad downstairs. And my dad was a big guy. My dad was like 6 foot something, like big build and everything. But because my dad was in a vulnerable position where he was like holding a load of bags or something, he wasn't able to defend himself, and obviously when he got kicked downstairs, like he was on the floor, and then just so my dad like essentially tried to crawl out the house, but his like insides were kind of like coming out because of like how much he'd been badly stabbed. And that's when like he like passed out and then died, and then luckily the neighbors like saw the commotion and like called the police and everything. But because of my dad being resuscitated, it caused like complications down the line. So he ended up having like heart issues. He ended up losing the use of his right arm completely because the guy severed the nerves in the arm. So where my dad was always like very like self-sufficient, he's now essentially disabled. And so it caused a lot of issues. They had to like take bits from his legs to try and fix his arm, and then it messed up his legs. And so I ended up at like 13, 14 years old. Like I was already working jobs like from very young age. Like I've always been working like from 12, paper round. And then, you know what it is. And then like picked up other jobs, and so then I ended up like essentially caring for my dad as well, and also looking after like my younger brother, like being the support for him. So I had to kind of like grow up very quickly. So my younger brother, we kind of had to always always act older than we were, could be essentially just kids. So what happened was it was a long process of like my dad like getting like back to health again, but it really messed him up because not being able to use his right arm, he was then dependent on other people, which he hated. He was a very independent person, and he just couldn't do a lot of things that he normally would be able to. But as I said before, he's a very like strong-willed person. He was really just like got on with things. Then he started to learn how to like draw and write with his left arm, and like as an older person, I think that's a really big thing to do, to like relearn how to do something. But so I essentially had to then like help care for my dad, whilst then at the time then I was like doing my A-levels, and I'd been doing my A-levels a year early because I was quite smart in that. At the time, don't know what happened now.
I love that.
So I was like doing my A-levels. I had like 3 different jobs that I was doing at the time, as well as school, and then also like helping with my dad and like what he'd been through. It was just like a lot going on. And like, I mean, when I say with my dad, I'd walk in maybe one time like into his apartment, and I'd like smell this like rotting flesh. I was like, what the hell, what is that, like what is that smell? It's awful. And he'd be like, oh, you're right, darling. And he's just like there with his hand on the stove because he can't feel his hand, like his hand's like literally like his whole right arm is numb and it's just on fire, and I'm like, Dad, like your fucking arm is on fire.
I'm so
he's
squeamish.
He's just like, oh shit. So he was like, you know, just like knowing that my dad was like you know, on his own, and like it only got worse as well as like time went on. As he got older, it only got worse, but bless him. So it was really tough. I mean, like, and then I think it was just a lot going on at that time, and also dealing with my own stuff, my own like insecurities and all that kind of thing. And I think my life was so kind of like chaotic. There was so much more going on within my family, and I have a bit of like, it was a bit of a weird family dynamic as well, because my dad is like was an older dad, so I had like siblings who are like older, and it was all a bit messy. But anyways, so I had like literally no control of my life, because I had like so much going on and having to deal with all these emotions, but also be still very strong. And so I ended up like turning it all into me. So like I started, the only thing that I could control was what I put into my body, and just control my body. And it ended up, first of all, just being like a health kick kind of thing. And I've always been very sporty from a very young age. Like I've always loved my sports. I was always, you know, in the football team, in the basketball team, in every single team. But it got to the point where I was just like, it became almost an obsession to just keep like losing weight, and just having that control. And like, so I played football for Southend Manor and ran for Southend, and I was like really up there with my sports. But it got to a point where I was losing so much weight, and so at first it was like orthorexia essentially. Didn't realize it at the time, and then it got to the point where I lost so much weight, I couldn't even play football anymore because I was so weak. So yeah, I essentially, I'm like, what, 5'7", and I went down to 40 kilos at my worst, which was, so that's when obviously the anorexia kicked in, and it happened all so quickly. It's hard to like put a timeline on it, but so then I ended up like just starving myself essentially, and then all the bad thoughts, like I just felt like I felt worthless. I didn't feel like I was worth being able to eat food. And how I describe it is, it was almost like I had another voice in my head, almost like a devil on my shoulder.
Oh
Oh yeah. Like a devil on my shoulder, like telling me what I should and shouldn't do, and like essentially just controlling everything I do. And there was like part of me still trying to like battle it, but that voice would get stronger and stronger and stronger. And it just got to the point where I didn't want to live anymore. Like I just wanted to become completely numb, completely empty. That's why I didn't want to eat. Like I ended up living off like a bite of an apple and diet lemonade. And obviously family could see that I wasn't well, but at that time, like there wasn't much like awareness about it. There wasn't much education on it. People, bless it, I feel for my family, because they could see me literally like dying in front of them, and they just didn't know what to do. They didn't want to trigger me as well, because then I'd have like a load of triggers. Like if they said something, it would like send me off into like an episode or whatever. So bless them, they didn't quite know what to do. And then I found that my mum was almost like coming out in sympathy with me with the anorexia, and she started having an eating disorder as well, and I could see it. And I saw that I was just like essentially just breaking everything that like was in front of me. So I ended up like moving out once I finished my A-levels. Like I just like moved out to Brighton so I lived in Southend at the time. Moved to Brighton by myself and just like cut off everyone. I think anyone who's going through eating disorders can like maybe relate that you end up just like losing a lot of relationships from it. And it's not that you want to lose those relationships, but the eating disorder becomes like so much, it becomes your life, that so much that you just isolate yourself from everyone and everything, and you don't even feel like you can be sociable or anything, because you're constantly just like filled with these awful, horrific thoughts, and it just completely takes over your whole soul. And you just become this like empty soul that just is just floating through life, basically just waiting to diet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I moved to Brighton. It obviously got worse. Like,
Yeah.
there was no way it was going to get better. But in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, I can control it more, and like, you know, I can get better.
Absolutely.
And you're just lying to yourself essentially. Like, there was always excuses. And yeah, bless my mum, like, was so good for me. Like, at that time, she was always so supportive, but she really struggled to help me in that sense. Like, she tried as much as she could, but it was just, I was a lost cause at that point. I was so deep into it. And yeah, so I ended up so I was studying then in Brighton, so I ended up going down the art route, because I couldn't play my football anymore, which was like devastating. Like, for anyone who's like an athlete or has been into sports since they were young, like, they understand, like, having that taken away from you and you can't do anything. Well, you can do something about it, but like, you couldn't at the time. Like, I was physically too weak to play or like to compete anymore, and that was a big part of my identity. And like, to have that taken away from me was just like horrible. Like, to not be part of that team anymore, and I was completely taken away from it. So then I went, and I was always like big into my art as well, and music, and I was like, okay, well, I can't go into sport anymore, so now I'm gonna go into my art and do that. So then I went to study art, went to Brighton. And it just, yeah, as I said, it just got worse because I could control it more. I didn't have anyone kind of like watching over me or trying to put like more high calorie things into my food and whatever. And so I could just do that. And it got to the point where I was so ill. I just collapsed at work, and then got hospitalized. And they'd obviously seen that I was very, very unwell, and would like get all the like IV drips on me because my electrolytes, like, everything was out essentially. Was just ridiculously underweight. So then I ended up moving and living with my sister in Cirencester. So she tried to like look after me there, and then I had to go back to Southend because I just couldn't live on my own anymore. So I had to go back to Southend and luckily got to finish my studies in Southend. But that's when the bulimia kicked in. So it was kind of like a weird stage between like anorexia and bulimia. So the anorexia was like, I was just starving myself essentially, and just had this voice in my head, and was very isolated. I would be obsessed with food. Like, food would be my every thought. When I woke up, when I went to sleep, I was like thinking about food, and like always going for really low calorie stuff. And it was just like, I almost had like an inbuilt tracker in my brain, and anything that I would eat, I would burn off. So if I even like ate a bit of, you know, a banana or whatever, I'd literally have to like run it off. And I was it was like, looking back, I was like, this is wild. I'd like go running at like 1 a.m. in the morning just to run off something, or if I felt like I was a little bit full, I had to run it off. And it's just like, I can't believe I was just trapped. I was just trapped, like completely trapped. And there was a time where I didn't admit that I was ill. I thought, oh no, I'm just being healthy. Like, oh yeah, I'm just cutting out a whole fucking food group. And I was like just cutting out carbs completely. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm being healthy. And there was like obviously not great education around that time. We grew up in the 2000s. We grew up with like, everyone has to be like really skinny and flat, and like and like I'd always been like quite well built, like quite athletic body, and like I'd had like, you know, kids at school comment on like my body, and like I'd always been quite insecure about it. So when I started losing weight, I was like, oh yeah, this is great, like I'm actually gonna, you know, look more like everyone else, I guess. And then so it was mental how, like, because I'm someone who is very all or nothing. I'm very like an extreme person, so like, and that can be good or bad, but like obviously with the anorexia and bulimia, it ended up being like, I wanted to be the best anorexic, like as fucked up as that sounds. It was I needed to be, you know, successful. So, like if I looked at my reflection, I thought I was fat, and like it was very black and white thinking, like you were either big or you weren't. And like it was weird actually, because like I always almost went back into like childlike thinking and like behaviors. And I think that was also like going through therapy when we spoke about it, was like going back to when I was that 8-year-old, and I hadn't actually like processed the things that I experienced. And I ended up like going back and like having like, you know, like cuddly toys and like always with me, and just turned very childlike again, and obviously I was like very tiny as well. And yeah, it was really bad. And so then with between that bit of time when I was between anorexia and bulimia, it was called EDNOS, so like eating disorder not otherwise specified. So it was like a mixture between anorexia and bulimia, where like I essentially found that okay, I can go out with people but I can still control what I'm putting in. So like, and that's when I started like eating and then purging, and then it honestly, bulimia was so much worse than the anorexia in my opinion. Like, I mean, it's not, everyone's story is different, and this is just my experience, but fuck me, that was like, looking back, I don't know how I survived that. It was actually horrendous. Like, I don't think I'm actually going to be like Bruce Lee, like honest and gruesome with all the ins and outs of this, because I think people need to hear it. And like, I will hopefully put a trigger warning before this, but like, I don't think people understand how horrific like anorexia and bulimia is, and what extremes you go to just like maintain a body weight, or even just like deal with the things going in your head. And essentially the bulimia was just something else. It was the binges. When I tell you binges, it's not just like, oh, I've just eaten like 2 hamburgers or something. It was like family portion sizes of like rummaging through the cupboards, eating things that I wouldn't normally eat, or like wouldn't even want to eat, like frozen things, like literally frozen things, like shit that like no normal person would eat. And like I would inhale it, like just as if like, all I can describe it is like as if I was possessed. Like something possessed me. I was not in my body when that happened. Like it was almost like I could look out from like almost like, like a god view, and see from that aerial view myself just going on this like binging rampage, and then suddenly something just click, I'd go back into my body, and this sounds really spiritual, but it's like, this is just the only way to describe it, but like go back into my body, and I'd just be like so disgusted with myself, and like this like feeling of disgust in myself was just so deep and like rooted that I just like, I need to get all this out of me. Like, I can't, what is going on? Like, I can't feel like this. I didn't like how I felt in my skin. And then you just like go to such extreme to like purge it. And the purges were horrendous, because like the binges, you've eaten so much to the point where you feel like your stomach is going to split. It's uncomfortable. It's not like the feeling of like, oh, I'm a bit full. It is like, my stomach feels like it's going to split. Because I've eaten so much, like I'm stuffing myself, and now I'm purging it all. And the purging, like, you end up finding like, this is so grim, but like you end up finding like what foods come up easier than others, what foods are really hard to bring up, and like and what can really hurt to bring up as well. And it ended up getting to the point where I was binging and purging 14 times a day, to the point where like I was trying to make myself sick by like getting like, I'd slightly break a pencil in half and like shove it down my throat to bring it up, and I could just I got to the point where I could just tense my stomach and bring it up, and like got to the point where I split my esophagus open, and I would like literally just be bringing up blood. Like, it was so bad and horrific, and obviously my stomach was messed up. And this is when I started having heart issues, and I was on sleeping tablets because I had insomnia, depression. It was a lot of things, and it was so horrendous. Like, I passed out in my own sick, and my mum would find me just like passed out on the floor, and I just keep doing it until I passed out, basically. I couldn't go out. I was so isolated in my home because I didn't want anyone to see me. I was like, my cheeks were like chipmunk cheeks, like I was so swollen.
Swollen.
And at the time I went to university in London, and so obviously a shared kitchen is not what you want for a bulimic. Luckily I had my own like room with an ensuite. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I mean, but it was looking back at it, I just can't believe I went through that. And it got to the point where my heart was giving out. My body couldn't cope with it anymore. I'd gone from this extreme of anorexia where my body was eating itself, and had heart issues. Like, my heart rate went down to 30 beats per minute, so I kept passing out all the time. Like, I had bradycardia, I had all these issues with my heart. I just remember sitting as like a 17 or 18-year-old in the cardiac unit around a load of like 80-year-olds and just thinking, wow, this is my life. Like, I am now fixed to a heart monitor. Like, I was on a heart monitor even when I was like anorexic. I'm on this heart monitor, my heart is literally giving out, but all these signs, like physical signs, like would never deter me from the eating disorder. Like, you can't scare yourself out of it. Like, I remember I was doing these like daycare sessions in Basildon, and they brought someone along and who like took their teeth out and was like, the bulimia like basically ruined my teeth. I have no teeth now. And although that was shocking, it was like, it's not going to scare us out of it. Yeah. It's like embedded in us, and like for so many years we've done this. So yeah, it was kind of crazy, and like I'll talk about more about the daycare at some point, but yeah, it got to the point where I was just like binging and purging so much, it took over my life. Like, my mum ended up putting a lock on the kitchen door because she didn't know how to stop it. So she thought, well, if I like lock it out, but there'd always be a way of me like I climb through windows to get to it. It was crazy the extents I went to, and like how secretive I was with food. And like, you know, I'd even be on the train, and like if I ate something, then I'd throw it back up in a fucking cup or something. It's just it was disgusting. But yeah, it got to the point where I was so exhausted, like mentally, physically exhausted. I didn't want to go on anymore. And so I ended up overdosing on my sleeping tablets, which, like, obviously stupid, but at the time I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't have any friends anymore. I was like pushing everyone away from me. I was obviously ruining, like, I don't know, I wasn't good to be around. I wasn't a healthy person. Like, I wasn't there. I wasn't me anymore. And like, I could see how much of a detrimental it was to my family. And I was just like, what is the point in me living? Like, I'm ruining myself. I don't want to be here. Every day I want to die. Like, so then I just overdosed. And then I remember just waking up in the hospital and just like seeing my mum there. And like, there was a psychiatrist there who was like a bit of a bitch. She was like, I couldn't believe it. I'd like just come up, like just woken up from like trying to literally like kill myself. And she was just like, you know, you could have like given yourself brain damage. And I was just like, well, yeah, like I didn't really want to wake up, to be honest. So that was like the least of my worries.
God, how really helpful when you just wake up from probably one of the most traumatizing moments of your life.
I know. Yeah. I could have said something better. I don't know.
Yeah, like, you're loved. You're here. You're safe.
Yeah, like, are you okay? I don't know, like something. And I was just like sitting, like lying in that hospital bed and just seeing my mum's face, like just when she saw that I woke up, and I was like, wow, fuck me, like I need to change. I need to do something. Like, I need to actually help myself, because I'm going to keep going on like this until I actually start trying to help myself and actually start putting things in motion. Because it's only myself I've got to blame with this. Like, obviously, like, it's a mental illness, but you have got to be the one who does something about it. Like, and I think the first thing is realizing that you've got an issue, like you've got something wrong, like there's something going on, and then it's then making that step forwards to actually try and help yourself. As much as like there's a part of you that doesn't want to help yourself, because that bulimia or anorexia like is almost like a comfort blanket. It's like, it's what you know, it's your default. It's like whatever stresses, whatever, that is your default, that's what you turn towards. And it was like I couldn't live without it, but it was also killing me.
Like, it's such a dark place, but there's like, there's no way out of it, but also you kind of like don't want to be out of it, because it's just been all you've known. Yeah,
it's what you know, and I've had it throughout my whole teenage years. Like, it's what I know. Like, and I think it was the fear of like, what is life without it? Because I didn't know what life was without it, and I was scared, and I think there was like a lot of emotions going on, and I didn't know how to break the cycle. I knew that it was going to be a really long journey ahead, but I was just like sitting there just in this hospital bed, like, Jesus, like I have wasted so many so many years, and I've got the body now of like a female who is like essentially dying. Like, my heart is giving out on me, my bones are breaking, I'm I'm losing my hair. Like with the anorexia, I lost my hair. I had to like buy wigs and stuff because my hair was literally falling out. Like it was horrendous, and I wasn't myself, and I was getting multiple like the physical effects of it. I don't think many people talk about as well. Like I was getting blood blisters in my mouth every day. I had like, obviously my throat was constantly in pain because it was just spreaded. Gastroenteritis all the time because of all the shit that like random shit I'd eat, and you just can't build any healthy relationships whilst you're in that state. Like, I'm sorry, you can't. I couldn't look after myself. So yeah, from that moment I was like, I need help, I need to change. And that's when like I went into like got the daycare sessions, which actually was traumatic. It was not helpful, and I think a lot of people find like you go through a lot of different therapy and it's about finding the one for you, and you've got to really stick with it, because I went through so much different therapy. I went through hypnotherapy, I went through like literally everything. I was like, I need help, like I need to get this. My mom was trying everything, and I went into these daycare sessions, and where I'd like it's essentially where you go in. It was like a full day at this like clinic, like a hospital, eating disorder unit, and it was weird because like I remember just you go in and you'd sit in this like waiting area, and the walls were all bright yellow, and that's why I like hate the color yellow now. They were like bright yellow. There'd all these anorexics sitting there, and it was in between. There was like, so the waiting room was between the eating disorder unit and the schizophrenic unit. And it was just like you'd see different people passing, and it was just like a really odd place to be in, like, because there's a part of you that doesn't believe that there's anything wrong with you, but then there's also obviously that there's part of you that's ill. But then you're sharing this with like other anorexics and bulimics who are all from like at different stages as well and have different experiences, but you end up actually like learning from them, like learning different habits and taking on those habits. And like they'd literally like lock us in a room with food and we'd have to eat it.
And also like anorexia is it's got such a competitive nature as well, hasn't it? And perfectionism, and and so actually when you are around others suffering, they kind of like can't help but compare, and they seem to be doing it better than I am. How are they being successful in this?
It's like when you look at it like that, like from anyone like listening, it's like it sounds really messed up, but like at the time when you're in that, it's just your brain has been wired differently. Like I can't explain it. It's like it's obviously an illness, but like so you like compare yourself, and you'd end up like learning tricks from them. So like they'd always put food that like is food that is like a fear food, so you'd have like fear foods and triggers. And so like my fear foods were like obviously anything that was like high carby or high fat, so like avocados, for example, bananas, like also junk food, anything like that, anything that was high calorie essentially. And so they just like, I just remember them putting this like pot of like Jaffa cakes and Oreos, and I was still vegan at this point, so I was vegan prior anyways, but obviously I had the Oreos, but I couldn't eat it, and everyone had to. And there was this one, we locked in a room with this person, and you'd have to eat this food, and you'd like, someone would then like try and distract them, and then we'd like hide the Oreo like down our top or something, or down the side of the chair. And then like they wouldn't let you go to the toilet before or after, wouldn't let you drink water with your food, like in case you were trying to bring it up. So they were trying to like restrict anything of your movements that you couldn't throw up, or like you couldn't purge, you couldn't all those things. And I just remember them like, because obviously being vegan, they had to give me vegan food, like, and I remember them just giving me a jacket potato with a whole block of vegan cheese and expecting me to eat it. And I was just like so terrified and traumatized by it, because like they're just watching me eat it, and I'm just like playing with my food, trying to make it look like and then they try and use scare tactics to scare us out of it, and it just didn't work. Like it just
I hear this time and time again.
I bet. And it's like, this is one of the NHS referrals, because I mean, when I was anorexic, I got so bad that they were like, you need to be taken in, like you need to have a bed. And what they called it at the time, I don't know what they call it now, but they were like, you need to have a bed, which is basically like essentially go into a facility where you are like constantly monitored, and you are fed either through tube or it's basically like a prison for eating disorders. But like it's essentially like rehabilitation, like they not rehabilitation, what do you call it, like it's kind of like they mix a mix of like therapy and trying to like essentially try and get you better, but rehab, but like you're locked in there. But a lot of the time it's only really private. I think it's called the Priory.
Yes.
And the only bed available for me was in Glasgow at the time, because they were so short on beds. I mean, I think it's still an issue with it. And it was super expensive as well, and we couldn't afford that, so we had to go down the NHS route, and it came to like the daycare stuff. And it's really sad and upsetting as well, because there'll be times where I go to the daycare and you obviously make friends there, and some of my friends just wouldn't be there, and I'd find out that they'd passed away from the anorexia or bulimia. And it was like, so I lost a lot of friends through the eating disorders, and even though it could kill you and you've seen it happen to like close ones, it still like doesn't shake it out of you. And it was crazy. Like I with the bulimia, like it wasn't just being sick, like I would like abuse laxatives as well, and which messes you up, man. Yes. You just go through any route of like purge, and so it got as I said, it got really bad. So then when I was in university, obviously I was still really ill with the EDNOS, trying to do a degree with the pressures of doing a degree and being in trying to be a normal uni student, and yet dealing with all these like demons was hard, because I wanted to try and be a normal person, but inside I was just like eating myself up. Like it was so hard for me to have that uni experience whilst like dealing with this, and then also it being a new situation where I'm now sharing a kitchen, dealing with the anorexia and bulimia, but trying to hide it from these like 11 other people sharing with me.
11.
It was, I know, because we living in this like huge mansion. Basically, it was like a converted. It was so funny because like ironically, it was a converted mental hospital.
Oh my gosh, what, like if you're in like
it's a halls of
spirits or
no, honestly, like I've got some stories of that place, but it was so the halls of residence was a converted mental institute, and one of the rooms that I managed to get, because I was classed as mentally disabled essentially, I got to have a room with an ensuite, and it was like one of the old like officers' rooms. So it was actually really beautiful. It was a really beautiful place, but one of the rooms was definitely like something fucked up went in that room, because anyone who lived in that room, they would go mental. Like when I say, I don't know if that's like politically correct, but like the shit that went down. Obviously we're all art students as well, so we're all a little bit fucked up anyway. Probably like a bit wrong with us, but so there was, I mean, we're all like high as a kite and everything, but anyone who lived in that room ended up being either suspended from something that they did, like would go absolutely insane. So no one ended up living in that room that was actually next door to me, because the shit that went down there was just like people would end up doing rituals in that room. It was bizarre, man. Whereas before they'd be like a completely like normal person, and then they'd come out of it just being like anyways, I'm going off track, but so like sharing with like that many people, and like whilst having this eating disorder, and I didn't have to like almost like schedule my binges, because like uni students, they're up 24 hours, mate. Like they come in and go in, and obviously I think I didn't really tell people that I had an issue, but I think people could tell. They knew, and then it ended up, so I was still in the NHS like referral system. Obviously I left the daycare, it was not working for me whatsoever. I got worse with it. I tried all these different therapies, and then I got so bad at one point. Obviously the bad thing with NHS, bad thing with it is like they only take you on really, or really think that it's serious, if you have a really low BMI, which is messed up with eating disorders, because you can look like you're healthy but have like a really, like you can be really seriously ill with eating disorders. I mean, at the time, obviously, I had a ridiculously low BMI, so I managed to get referred pretty quickly. Well, I say quickly, it took me years to actually get the proper help that I needed.
Yes.
And going through multiple different ways. And honestly, like, I think had I not have got the help, like the professional help that I did, I would have not left uni like alive. I would have been so I mean, I was really lucky in the sense that it's awful to say, but I got so ill to the point where they were like, fuck, she actually really needs help, or she is going to die. So I managed to get funding for the Royal Maudsley Hospital, which is the head of eating disorders. Luckily at the time, so I was studying fine art in Camberwell, and the Royal Maudsley is actually up the road from Camberwell, so that was my nearest one. So luckily I got that, but it was just like kind of heartbreaking to know that like so many people wouldn't get the help they need because they weren't ridiculously underweight. Yeah, they weren't sick enough, or they weren't, because it was really weird. Like, it's bizarre when you go for it, because you essentially, I remember the first time I went to the doctors about it, you could clearly see I was ill, but like that's not always the case for people. But you filled out a questionnaire, and the questionnaire was just like, are you depressed? Do you have suicidal thoughts? And it's just like, it's just a yes no thing. And like, oh, if you like pass the test, then you can get help. And really what the help was just filling you up on antidepressants and sleeping tablets, and essentially just drugging you. And which, like, I'm not saying the drugs are bad, like they did like help to point. Like they got you through it, and they essentially like numbed you to an extent. And I was on such a high dosage of antidepressants, and I was on a lot of different stuff, like, because obviously with the eating disorder, your body can't function properly. So I had to take loads of things, just even let my body do like normal functioning things that body should be doing involuntary. So yeah, it was I was like filled up on meds and whatever, but got to the point where they were like, okay, fuck, like okay, we can't get you a bed, but we can get you like be an inpatient within the Royal Maudsley. And I was like, okay, great, like, because this is obviously affecting my studies. I can't study properly. I was in and out of uni with it. So yeah, I went to Royal Maudsley, and honestly, it was so good, that place. Like, because I'd been through so many counselling, and like even when I was in Brighton, I did a little bit of counselling, and it was just like so bad, like it made it worse. And then with this, it was like they took a lot more holistic approach. And I was on actually a new project at the time called Freed, Freed. And the Freed project was a new thing. It was kind of like a mixture of CBT, but like a more holistic way of going about it. They were really great there. And actually now I found like now the Freed project has like multiple awards and everything. I think it's quite a big thing. But I was like one of the first people on it. And it was great because I had my own dietitian, I had my own therapist. They'd hold things like even like little massage sessions, just things to like take you away from the eating disorder a little bit. And it was really good. Like that professional help really helped, but it didn't completely eliminate the eating disorder. But as I said, it was tough going through uni with that and still just completely damaging my body like I did. And but you know, I spent, I think, 2 years at the Maudsley whilst also trying to finish a degree. Managed to eventually, I was discharged from hospital from the Maudsley because I only had a certain amount of funding essentially. So that funding ran out, and it was a really surreal point for me because I'd clearly got to a healthier weight at this point. I was still bulimic, not so much like anorexic anymore, but like still bulimic, so I had the thoughts, still was very depressed, but I was now just kind of like let go. And now I was kind of like to fend for myself, but I had all these kind of like things that I'd learned from the help that I got at the Maudsley, and so that I could really take with like coping with the eating disorders better. And what they actually did was they reached out to the council and they got me a gym membership.
Here we go. This is the turning point.
If you have enjoyed listening to the podcast today, then please head over and leave us a rating or a review. This would be hugely appreciated. And as a thank you, I will make sure that I send you my 30-minute transformational audio that you must listen to every day for some serious level ups. And I will also add you into our Facebook community group where there is daily motivation and support for each other. Please just send it over via any social media platform or on email. Thank you.
So yeah, they got me like a gym membership to help with my mental health, because I mean, it was a bit weird, I guess, when you look at it, when like I'd abused cardio for so many years to try and lose weight and almost like use exercise as a way of punishment, to punish myself. And now I was like, oh, it's a bit weird that they're giving me a gym membership when maybe I could end up going into the same habits.
Yes.
But actually, like, going into weight training was completely different. It really allowed me to focus on myself, get myself out of my bedroom and out of the house, and just kind of like, it was almost like a release.
Yes.
And because a lot of the time, like, the bulimia was like a form of self-harm. It was like I was harming myself, and that was a form of release, the self-harm. And now this kind of was a different kind of release, but a more positive release. And it allowed me to really just focus on what my body is capable of instead of what it looks like all the time, and really just like start to feel strong. I'd felt so weak and so just not myself for so many years that it was a really nice feeling, and just have a little bit of structure as well, because again, my life was like so chaotic, and the gym really just gave me that structure, and it was very objective. Like, you just lift the weights, like it wasn't like no one was judging you, no one's like, and then so when I started like training, I was putting so much into my training that I was like, well, I need to fuel my sessions. And that's where my food habits and my relationship with food improved, alongside with obviously the help with the Maudsley and the dietitian and everything, because I don't want on this podcast to say that like powerlifting saved my life. Like, it did to an extent, but also like the professional help was so pivotal for me as well. Like, you can't just use like lifting as a way of therapy. Like, you need to rewire your brain when you're that deep in an eating disorder. You literally need to rewire your brain. So you need that professional help to really like delve back into your past and open up all those like boxes that you'd like hidden. Like, and so like it really, like, I went back into my past as like an 8-year-old, and like what I went through then, and what I went through with my dad, and all that kind of stuff, and really just saw why I did these things, and why, like, I mean, I'd bottled everything up, and it's now come out when I'm older, because I held it in for so long. I tried to be strong for so long that eventually it just broke me, and that's why I ended up going back into like a childhood thing, because I never really actually got to experience like a proper childhood. So yeah, it was therapy is really interesting, because you learn a lot about why your brain does things and why it works in a certain way, and it's really like the brain is just incredible with how it tries to deal with things, and it tries to protect you. Like, your brain is trying to protect you, and that's why it like erases certain things from your memory, or it like tries to bottle things up and
give you a coping mechanism.
It does that to protect you, because it could have really it could have really fucked me up. I mean, I was fucked up, but like, it would have really fucked me up.
Even more,
it could be worse. But yeah, so then I've always been super competitive, as you've seen, like throughout my life, like always really competitive, loved my sport, and so to get back into like training was like great for me. And then I was just training and realized like, oh, I'm like really enjoying this, and
I'm quite good at this.
Yeah, I'm quite good at this, and like, I've actually found something that I enjoy, because my throughout the eating disorders, like, I never found enjoyment in anything. Everything was so dark and solemn, and like I didn't love life. I didn't I didn't I had nothing. I hadn't, when people say they have like a glow to them, they have a sparkle. I'd lost my sparkle. Like, I was completely just I felt like I was just a grey human just walking through life. And this kind of gave me that like sparkle back, and
a connection.
I started like getting a bit more sociable. I actually started building relationships again, but I was obviously very scared, because I'd seen how like much I'd ruined relationships in the past from it. which I couldn't help at the end of the day. But like, yeah. And so someone just mentioned to me, like a PT at the gym was like, have you ever considered powerlifting? And I was like, powerlifting? What the fuck is powerlifting? I never heard of it before. And obviously I'd heard about bodybuilding before. And then I got to this like crossroad where I was like, should I go into competing in bodybuilding or powerlifting? And obviously going down the bodybuilding route, I knew I was lying to myself. I was like, yeah, that would just literally be an excuse for me to just keep restricting and focus even more on what I look like. And I came to this point where I was like, I am a lot more aware of where I am right now and like what I'm in and what I've been through. Like, do I really want to put myself in a situation where I know what the outcome is going to be, and I know the outcome is going to be leading me right back to where I started?
Definitely.
No matter how much people try and like sugarcoat it with like bodybuilding, it's not healthy. I mean, like at any elite sport, any level sport, it's not healthy. But especially with eating disorders, and when you're restricting, because there is such a high level, like you have to restrict with bodybuilding, and it is very like body focused, and there's like it's all focused around what you look like. That would just be awful for anyone going with an eating disorder. And anyone who goes into it with an eating disorder, you're just kidding yourself, because that is just a massive excuse of like, oh no, I'm doing it for my competition for bodybuilding, and
I'm doing it in a healthy way this time. I've had that
it is like, however much you try and sugarcoat it, at the end of the day it's putting you back into those unhealthy restrictive habits. So I was like, no, I'm not doing this.
No, well done.
Back there. And so went into powerlifting and just Googled it. And I love when I find something, I research the fuck out of it. Like I need to know everything about it. It was the same with like when I first went vegan, like I looked into it and I just went into this black hole of like, whoa, this is messed up. Like, wow, like, and I just wanted to know everything about it. And then it was the same with powerlifting. Like, it was just I looked into it and joined a powerlifting club and saw these other strong females. Like the club that I joined was like 90% female. Amazing. And they were all on like the GB team. They were all super strong, and I was just like, oh my god, I want to be like these girls. Like, these girls are incredible. They're lifting all these weights, they're like breaking barriers, they're like just it was insane. Like, I was like, this is so cool. And so I really put everything into it. I did go to the extreme with it. As I do. I like worked my fucking arse off in the gym. I was training, I was eating. I still had that like bulimia, but it was like, I mean, with any kind of recovery, it's not linear. It was very up and down, and I'd have relapses. And
but you could almost feel it in your body that it's starting to go.
Yes,
the gaps are getting bigger each time.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, okay, I had one day where I didn't purge. That's a win for me. Like, I have one whole day where I didn't purge. For me, that was amazing, because I'd binge and purge every single day. So for me to like not binge and purge, to have one day off was, okay, that's a win. And then maybe I'd go 2 days purging, and then it'd be like I'd have a few days not purging, and the days would get like a bit longer with like not purging, and then maybe I'd completely relapse, and then it would be like, and sometimes it would feel like I was going 1 step forward, 2 step back, but I was going in the right direction. No matter how up and down it was, I was going in the right direction with it. And I would eventually like have like, I remember when I had my first whole week of not binging and purging, and it was such a big deal for me, like, because I'd spent so many years in it, and like to now finally like give my body a break, because doing that is exhausting. Like, and I was just like, oh my god, like, this is really great. And so I was like, I think I'm in recovery. I know I'm in recovery, and I've got something that I'm really passionate about now, and like I'm still at university. Like, I'm actually able to put a little bit more into my art now, and I was doing my powerlifting. It was really great. It was going better, and then my stepdad suddenly died. Like, it was really out of nowhere, because my mum got with my stepdad, and I was really, really close to him, and we just went round to his one day and just found him just on the sofa, and it was just, that was really traumatic, obviously. And like, I had to be really strong for my mum, because that was they were going to build a life together, do you know what I mean? And and I'd also grown up with him. He was like a family friend, and I then had to go back to that being strong for parent, and so it almost had to go back into like what I was for my dad and for my brother, and I'd obviously lost someone really close to me. So then I had like a massive relapse, and it went back into it again. And then I found out my dad got cancer, and it was all just like, again, a lot at once.
Yeah.
Something can't always just go good for something.
Yeah, just give me a
break.
Yeah.
But at this point, so 2018, I got into powerlifting. I was in my last year of university, so I was doing my dissertation. It was all a lot as well. Going to powerlifting, did my first competition within 4 weeks of training.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah, start. Yeah.
And then I qualified for nationals in my first competition, which was a big deal. And then I was like, fuck, I'm good at this, and like I am really enjoying this. And qualified for nationals, and then competed at nationals. Did really well, and then that year I got onto the GB team for bench only, so I was like pretty good at bench press, and got onto the GB team, and it was like insane. And then the following year I got onto the England team for the Commonwealth and the GB team for the bench again, and I competed at the Commonwealth, and I won the Commonwealth twice. Like I won the bench and I even like totaled so high that I was a junior at the time, a junior lifter. I even broke the open. The person who won the open, I like beat them as well. I got the best lifter at the competition. Like it was great, but like it was weird. 2019 was a really weird year for me. I think it was probably one of my worst years, because I graduated from university, which was a big thing for me, because I remember my mum saying at my graduation, she was like, I honestly thought you'd be leaving uni in a coffin.
Oh,
which like was awful to say, but like that really hit me, and I was like, wow, fuck, like I've really come a long way, like from this. And so that was like a really nice moment to have like graduated and everything. But then like my dad got diagnosed with cancer, like throat cancer, and my stepdad had just died, and it was just, and then my sister also got breast cancer, and it was just like a lot happened at once. And like, so yeah, my dad got throat cancer, and so my whole world kind of like then went back to circling around him and supporting him. And it all just happened so quickly. So that 2019, I was in a really toxic relationship. I was in a toxic workplace. I had my powerlifting from the out. If you're looking on my Instagram, it was looking like great. It was like I was winning all these things. I was winning British Championships. I was winning Commonwealth. I was doing all these great things, but underlying with that, I was really struggling. Like I was relapsing really badly. Like, my dad was like obviously going through that, and I ended up actually being homeless as well at one point, because I was in so much debt from like university, and like trying to like support my dad, and got myself into a lot of debt. I was like living out my car because I was like working in London, but like kind of couldn't live back home, and it was all a bit of a mess. And I was living out of hostels, and it was a really bad place. I was still young as well. Bear in mind, I was like 21, 22. Like I was super young. I'd only just recovered from this I hadn't recovered, but like I was in recovery of an eating disorder. I didn't know any better because I'd always had like someone there, I guess. And then I was always very independent, but I tried to support myself. And it was a really horrific year because I had no real like support system, because I'd obviously left the Maudsley, and I had nowhere really to live. I was living at my car. It was like kind of dangerous. And then my dad was going through this, and it was just really awful. And just to see my dad like go from being like such a happy soul to then just being like essentially into a vegetative state. Like it was because he started like losing balance and would like pass out and hit his head, and me and my brother would have to go around and even just do things like clean him and like cook for him. And like the cancer was really bad because we had to be carers for our dad again, which like I was fine with, but it was really hard for myself, who was like 21, 22, my brother was 20, like we were young. Liam, my little brother, was prison officer, so he was really dealing with some shit at work as well. So, and both me and my brother were like traumatized from like our lives anyway. And so we're still dealing with a lot of shit, but yeah. And then so we made the decision to put my dad in a home because we couldn't live our lives, and we were still dealing with a lot of stuff, and my brother was working like 30-hour nights. It was really bad, and I was going back and forth from Southend to London, living out my car, doing three different jobs, and in this really toxic place. And we couldn't care for him like we wanted to. I didn't have any money to support him, and like looking back, like now I'm in a very good situation. I just wish I was in this situation when he was in that position, so I could have supported him more. But I mean, you're only like, you can't look back and do that. So we decided to put him in home just like temporarily, just whilst we try and like sort our shit out. And but that was like the worst thing that we could have ever done, because it ended up, we went to him and he lost so much weight, and we just like, what? He wasn't him. He was like almost drowsy and wasn't communicating properly. And our dad kept telling us like, they're drugging me. And like at the time we thought it was just like the cancer like had got to his like head a bit, and like there was a part of us that didn't almost believe him. But then it got to a point where we're like, no, something is seriously wrong here. He shouldn't be progressing at this rate. Like, it shouldn't be going this quickly, like such a downhill from where he was able to communicate to us, and now he's literally a vegetable. Like, he can't do anything. And I was trying to do like physical therapy with him as well, because at the time I was like a coach, because powerlifting had helped me so much. I wanted to help other people, and so that's why I got into coaching. And I was helping my dad with it, and I was speaking to my brother, and I was like, something is seriously not right here. And turned out that the home were starving him and drugging him, like overdosing him on drugs to make him essentially a vegetable, because they were just trying to, and the rate of people dying in that home was really high. Ended up a whole police investigation with it. So we had to go through all the police. It was like really big, and the home ended up getting closed down because of it. So it was like really serious. So we took our dad out of that home, but my dad was in such an awful state at this point, how much they messed him up, that we couldn't be full-time carers with him as much as we wanted to. We couldn't, but he needed that full-time support. And before prior to the home, he was in sheltered accommodation, so to help. But like, then we had to put him in like a home again, which I hate it, because my dad always said, don't ever put me in a home. But it's just like, when you're that young and no one tells you how to do these things. Like, we weren't taught how to do things. We had to grow up like super young. Like, at this point we should still be going out pissed. You know what I mean? I know we were having to deal with this. And so we put him in a home, and we knew that this was going to be like a kind of like end of life kind of situation, because it clearly wasn't getting any better. But when we put him in that home, it was such a better home. He perked up, and he came out of that vegetative state, and he was back to being like normal, like not normal, but like, back to himself a little bit again. And I think like, just, it's a really hard time going through that, because you're almost like grieving for someone who's still alive. It's a really odd thing to explain, but like, that they're dying in front of you and you can't do anything about it, and you're seeing them like waste away, but you're like, what can I do?
No, you have to just sit and be there.
So he was in there. Eventually he did got a call at one night. I just couldn't sleep. Like, I was at my ex's place at the time, and I just couldn't sleep, and it was something just was bugging me. And I got out, and my phone rang, and it was my brother, and I just knew immediately. And it was weird, because like I'd only just seen my dad for Father's Day, and I think that for him was a kind of like closure, because like a goodbye. And so got the call, and just drove straight back at like midnight, and so that kind of like, it was so shit.
I do need to take a minute. It needs to take a minute.
Yeah, I know.
Deep breath. Oh, you're so brave.
Yeah, so it was really shit. And then no one tells you how to like deal with funeral.
No.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry at all. You've been through so much. Taking on the weight of the world. Oh, honestly, this is needed. It's needed.
Where are the tissues when you need them? God, no matter how many times I like say this story, it still like gets you. I think. Yeah.
Oh yes, of course.
Cool. But yeah, so like as I said, like I was going through that. My dad just passed away, and then I was channeling everything through my training because that was the one thing I had that was actually going well.
Yeah.
So I was like putting everything in my training, but like I don't think people realize like when I was like,
no, don't be sorry. Never be sorry.
When I was like standing on the podium, like what I'd been through.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's seeing your social media.
Yeah.
And you know exactly what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, so it was really hard, but we got through it.
You got through it.
So yeah, it was a crazy time because then like.
So did you compete quite quickly afterwards, stood on the podium then?
That 2019, I competed 10 times, which is insane. Like normally you'd compete about 3 times a year, but that year I competed 10 times because I just needed something to take me away from it all.
Yeah.
And so obviously had to deal with the funeral stuff, and like as a 23-year-old like trying to do a funeral it's like crazy.
Well, you're not supposed to, we live in this life, we're not supposed to be doing funerals at that age.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, yeah, so that all happened, and then so obviously like that was shit, but then I kind of like got myself back on track, and I think me and my brother were just like so close, and are so close that we really just like got each other through it and just kept like, yeah, we're just there for each other. So come 2020, obviously I had the shittest year of my life, and I was just like, I need to like change this. Like I can't be in this situation ever again. And so I worked my fucking arse off with work and got myself out of the debt and got a place, and I was just like, things started to like look up again.
Yeah. And
this was, so now like, yeah, 2019 I also won my first full power British as well as a junior. So yeah, as I said, like it was like amazing, like I did so many amazing like achievements, but behind the scenes it was fucking shit. So shit. So 2020 it was a new year, and I was just like, you know what, like I can't let myself be a victim. No. And I think a lot of people like they go through stuff and you've got a choice whether to constantly feel sorry for yourself and like constantly be in that past and be a victim of it and like let yourself drown in all that crappiness and all the stuff that you've been through, because I don't want to like take away anything from it. It was an awful things that I've been through, and like I mean everyone has their own experiences, but it was an awful thing that I went through, and I mean it definitely changed me as a person, how my outlook on life, and like with the eating disorders, like I'm now so much more grateful for every day because how close like I was on the line with like not being alive. So like now I'm so grateful to be here and doing what I'm doing. But yeah, as I said, I think you've got like 2 choices in life. You can either let yourself just drown in it and really like let it consume you and go back into that state where you get drowned in it, and or you can like kind of like deal with it however best you can and like take what you've learned from it and take it and just like use it as strength to get yourself going into a different direction that is a lot more positive, and be able to still like live life and still be able to enjoy things without having, it's always with you, like grief and going through the eating disorders and everything that I went through. It's still with me. It's a part of me, but it doesn't define me.
No,
it's not. Although I've been through that, it's an experience, but it's not something that like is me. I'm not that anymore. And I still hold all that grief, and it does get hard at times. It comes in waves, but it's really made me who I am. Like, and I think you, like, with adversity comes like it really builds a person. Like, it really strengthens you as a person, and you become really resilient to things.
Absolutely.
And I think if I've gone through all that and come out the other side,
a movie star,
I can fucking do anything. Like, bring it on.
Yeah. Oh my god, I love that.
Bring it on, bitches. Like, so like now, like doing like powerlifting, and then I then 2020 I got selected for the GB team in the Open, which is a huge thing for my first ever Open like debut. And then obviously COVID hit, which was a pile of shit. So I was like so happy that I got on the GB team. It's a massive honor I've always seen myself as someone who'd be like an Olympian or something like that. Like, you
always had the vision.
I always had the vision of like, I knew I was capable of things and could do these things. And what I've been through, I knew that I had the strength to do whatever obstacle came in front of me. I knew I could overcome it, like, because of what I have done. And obviously COVID hit, which wasn't good for eating disorders, because you're you get stripped of a lot of things. But that actually gave me an opportunity to really raise awareness for eating disorders, and I became an ambassador for the Royal Maudsley and like help with stuff with that and stuff with like Mind Charity. Like, I was like really into all that kind of thing, and I ended up going on national TV like news and speaking about eating disorders within like whilst in COVID. And so actually like I used it as an opportunity to really like raise awareness and like educate people. I think it's the biggest thing, because now there is a lot of awareness around eating disorders, but there's still that like misinformation and not enough education on it. But I was really lucky at the time as well, because I was now classed as an elite athlete. I was still able to train with a coach within COVID. And I know a lot of people weren't able to get to gyms, and that really took a big hit on a lot of people, but I was really lucky to be able to do that. And then coming out of COVID, I was actually in a really good position with my training and everything. And my coaching was really kicking off, and I was coaching the England team. And as a female in that very male dominated area, was like, I wanted to be a role model for other females to be like, look, you can do this. Because when I was back then, like, I didn't see many female coaches, and like there was like a female athletes that still, it's really massively taken off now, but and I just really wanted to be like, no, you can do this. And I wanted to be that person where like kind of, you can be both, and you can have that, you can be in that position of like power, I guess. And it was, I'm not going to say it was easy, because especially as a female in any kind of area like that, you almost have to work 10 times harder than your male male coaches. I feel like you have to like almost prove yourself so much more, and prove that you've got the ability to do it, and prove your intelligence. And it's crap that we have to do that, but like I hate saying it is what it is, but it is that situation. We have to, and I hate it that it is like that. So like coming out of COVID, then I actually felt like a bit of an imposter on the GB team, because I'd actually placed third at my first Open, but because of how it worked, and some of the top two girls like went down into like different weight classes and stuff, I ended up being selected for the GB team, and I felt like a bit of an imposter because I hadn't actually won the British. But coming out of COVID, it meant that obviously the world's never happened, so I had to do the British again. And this time I was like, no, I'm going to prove myself. I'm going to prove to myself that I am worthy of being on the GB team. And I fucking went and won it. It was mad, because like when I first did powerlifting, obviously I still had very low bone density, and I was telling you earlier, like when I first put a powerlifting belt on, I broke my ribs.
Oh my.
And so I had to compete at my first British, like with no belt, because I had broken ribs, and which was wild. But then so my second British, I won it, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm on the GB team, and I've like deserved, I've like earned my place here. And then I did my first Worlds in Sweden. It was still like that kind of like COVID era, so it was a little bit like odd, like we had to wear masks and everything. And my first Worlds, I actually like podiumed for both bench press and deadlift. Broke the European deadlift record and like British records. And like, I think actually at the time, maybe it wasn't, I don't know if it was European at the time, but I hit like a 227 kilo deadlift. It was huge. And it was my first, like no one really knew about me either. So I was kind of a bit of an underdog. And it was a bit of an odd one because I'd placed 4th overall at the World Championships. And then like, I think it was like 6 months later, I got a text from one of the guys and my sponsors, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he was like, "Oh, you haven't heard?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "The girl who you came second or third to failed a drugs test."
Yes, bump me up, baby.
But the situation was, because she was tested after the competition, I couldn't get bumped. So I'd lost out on a placing. And I've heard of people like losing out on placings due to like failing a drug test, and I was just like, I didn't realize how much it would hit me. I actually got really emotional, because I was like, I've worked so fucking hard, and someone has stolen those opportunities and that experience from me of standing on the podium by taking drugs, and it was really shit. But I was just like, it made me actually so much more determined to be like to earn that place there. And ever since, like I then won the European Championships. So now I'm 2-time European champion. Like I won my last Euros last year, and took the European deadlift record, and like and now fully like I would say fully recovered. Like I'm no longer bulimic, and I've really got in a better place. That is not my default anymore. It's been going up and up and up since then, and I really taken to powerlifting, and it's just a whirlwind. Sorry, that was literally my life story.
That was like my jaw's on the floor, and I was like, oh.
You were like, start from the beginning. I was like, well, where do we start?
Right, here we go. I think anyone listening to this is just going to be like me. The words that are going to be coming up for them is just like resilient. Like you've just been through so much, you've overcome so much. You're now sat in this place where there's more to life. Got to get out there somewhere for you. And everyone, whether they're struggling with an eating disorder, body dysmorphia, or just anxiety, depression, imposter syndrome, whatever it is. When I say just, I mean it's not just, but they'll be listening thinking, okay, if she can do that, I can do this, and whatever it is for that individual person. But thank you so much for sharing your story, because obviously some of that was really not easy to do.
I think as much like I try as many times as I say it, like it always brings back stuff, but I think it's so important to share these stories and show that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And especially for people who are maybe like in it right now or experience similar things, like please get professional help. Like it's the first thing that I say. And then like whatever you're passionate about, like use that as a way of like helping you get out of like any little thing that is positive or can give you some sort of joy, like latch onto that. And because it's so important to be enjoying the things that you do and that you love and pursuing those things. And I never ever thought in a million years that I would be in the position that I am in now. As much as I always wanted to be, I never like, especially when I was deep in the eating disorder, never thought I'd be where I am now. But anything is really possible, like if you really put your mind to it and you really put your whole self into it. And if you really want to help yourself, like please do. Like even if there's just like an inkling, just or even if people are listening who have got like relatives who are going through this kind of thing, like just you being there means a lot to them. You don't have to go to all these extremes, but just like educating yourself and just supporting them as you can. Try not to force anything on them, but like I think educating is the biggest thing. Just trying to understand it helps, because when you're in that place, it's like no one understands. It feels like no one understands you.
Like
Sounds like an angsty teenager, but like no one understands.
No one gets it. It does. It definitely. And I think that is something that's just come up over and over again from people on the podcast, is actually you just feel like you're on your own, but you're really not.
Yeah,
you're really
no,
not.
100%. And like I know that you've been like experienced similar, like, and as all of our stories are different, but there's things that we can definitely relate on. And I think that's when these things like these podcasts really help, and people can just take little things that maybe they relate to and then see that there can be a good outcome at the end of it. And you can really like I flipped my life 180, and like you can definitely do that too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sophia. Where can everyone find you? What's your Instagram handle?
So my Instagram is @SophiaStrength, and then my coaching is Ellis Coaching. So you can find me on Instagram, also on like, TikTok, got a website, www.sophiaellis.co.uk. Just for like coaching stuff. Mainly on Instagram. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sophia. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much.